morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the extremely warm welcome you've extended to Mr. Lincoln and myself. We are most gratified to be here. This is our first visit to the Dakota Territories, and we're very proud of what you've done with the land here. The American Civil War is said to have started on April the 12th of 1861, when Fort Sumter was fired upon in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, and ended 4 years later, almost exactly to the day, on April the 9th, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. Over the course of those 4 years, thousands of battles were fought all over this country, and hundreds of thousands of casualties resulted. But perhaps one of the best known battles took place on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863, in and around a quiet little town in Pennsylvania by the name of Gettysburg. At the end of those 3 days alone, there were over 50,000 casualties, 50,000 Americans, North and South, who were either dead, wounded, or simply missing. The custom at the time was to send the bodies of the fallen back to their home states for burial, but the overwhelming number of casualties made this extremely difficult, if not impossible. And so it was quickly decided that a portion of the battlefield itself should be purchased and converted into a national cemetery. Of course, once the work was done and everything was ready, it was considered necessary to have a dedication ceremony. The date of the ceremony was scheduled to accommodate the schedule of the man they had asked to be the main speaker at the dedication, not the President of the United States, but a man from Boston, Massachusetts named Edward Everett, who informed them that the earliest date that he could be available and have a speech prepared would be November the 19th, 1863. And so the date was scheduled for that time. After that was taken care of, after the date had been set to accommodate his schedule, then other invitations could be extended. An invitation was finally sent to President Lincoln on November the 2nd, 1863. They asked him to merely to come and to be present at the ceremonies. The president immediately accepted. This may have unnerved a lot of the people on the committee. They hadn't really expected him to accept the invitation. It may have been more of a courtesy than anything else. Once taken at their word, however, they may have hoped that he understood their emphasis on the word appropriate. They asked him to simply set apart the grounds to their sacred use by a few appropriate remarks. They may have hoped that he understood that emphasis, since it was feared by some of them that Mr. Lincoln would not sufficiently appreciate the gravity and solemnity of an occasion like this. On November the 19th, 1863, Edward Everett spoke for 2 hours without notes, memorized a 2-hour-long speech, detailing the details or the fighting of 3 days around Gettysburg, the efforts of the citizens of Gettysburg to render assistance, and ending by invoking benediction on the honored graves of the martyr heroes. After he finished his speech, the Marine Band played the hymn Old Hundred, also known as the doxology, Praise God from whom all blessings flow. And then the Master of Ceremonies introduced the President of the United States. Mr. Lincoln rose and stepped to the front of the platform to deliver a few appropriate remarks.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we're engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as the final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or to track. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be here dedicated to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion, and that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.